All right. Hello, everybody. Uh, I'm here. I'm going to talk more about getting hands-on with the arcade tutorials. In the previous session, Kiki talked about some of the tutorials and skill maps, and I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into them. So hopefully you learn something new and get something of value from that. But tutorials, I think, again, some of you in the chat were saying, how's this different from Scratch? Well, this is one of the features that is different and so powerful. It's an easy way to kind of unlock coding and creativity for your students. It's just a really kind of easy entry point to get into MakeCode Arcade and really the rest of the MakeCode products. All right. So let me just kind of start off with a little introductory question. Yes, an ice-breaking question. Sorry, I have to do it, but here are kind of 5 educator personalities. If you're not an educator, that's all right. Could just be your personality. But we have the storyteller. So this is someone that loves to weave narratives into a lesson. I wish I was like this. I'm not a good storyteller, but I always admire teachers that could do that. The explorer, this is someone that's loves that project-based learning, kind of open-ended, guides the students through that. We have the strategist, which is basically the teacher that plans out every single detail, scaffolding different kind of options for the students to choose from and challenges to unlock. We have the action hero. That's someone that likes a high energy classroom, fast-paced activities, hands-on, always moving, always doing. And then we have the tinkerer. That's someone that loves to take something apart, remix it, put it back together, kind of your maker problem solver. All right. So if you could just kind of pop in to the chat what number you are. I really do think kind of educators were all of these things, but which one kind of really speaks to your inner self? Let's go ahead, pop that in so we can see what kind of styles we have today in today's sessions. Yes, I'm some teacher. I'll get to introducing myself in the next slide. So a lot of 4s, action heroes, 5 and 4, 2. I view myself as the explorer, kind of the project, the guide on the side instead of the sage on the stage. All right, excellent. So in today's session, I'm going to kind of try my best to match up your teaching style with tutorials, because really tutorials and skill maps will help all of these educators. All right, so I apologize for being so rude. I didn't introduce myself. I'm McCoach. Like I said, I'm just some teacher. I'm a public school educator. I have developed some curriculum. I'm an indie game developer, but most importantly, a MakeCode enthusiast. So I'm going to kind of tell you my story of how I got started with MakeCode and MakeCode Arcade. Originally, I was using MakeCode with the microbit, kind of hands-on programming and kind of integrating some science in with that. And then I discovered that they had a arcade version where you can make games with MakeCode. My inner child's mind exploded. I was amazed because growing up, I would always sketch out my game ideas, characters, worlds, stories, but really couldn't even make them real. I even remembered I sketched out a game for the Nintendo 64. It was Bob the Alien something. I thought it was so clever, where the aliens had to rescue one of their friends who were abducted by humans. I know that was the twist. And I even sent it into Nintendo, but I think all I put on the envelope was Nintendo and then put into the mailbox. So I'm still waiting to hear back from them. So Nintendo, if you're watching, and I know you are, hey, still waiting. But anyways, now this is a reality where MakeCode Arcade has provided something that's accessible to a lot of people and our students. And tutorials is kind of the best way to get started on that game dev adventure. All right, so here are some of the features with tutorials. You probably noticed when Kiki, was going through these. You notice how a step by step right? So it really has that built-in scaffolding for students, and it really kind of narrows their focus so they're not distracted by all the kind of bells and whistles that the editor has. We also have some in-editor guidance, so other visuals that can help the students kind of figure out what the instructions are asking them to do, whether this is an image, a GIF, videos, and even little hint blocks as well. And then we have the instant feedback, the game simulator, right? So this is where students can see the changes that they make come to life in real time. And I think that's really powerful because it allows the students to fail fast, and hopefully fail forward. All right, so those are just some of the features. We're going to be, again, kind of walking through this together in just a little bit. But here are the collection. There's even more available out there. So it comes in a wide variety of styles and concepts. And again, there's always adding more. MakeCode's always adding more. I remember one time I was teaching my class and was going to MakeCode and realized they now have multiplayer and multiplayer tutorials. Well, I told my class we're scrapping what we're doing that day, and we're just going to explore this new feature. And it was just kind of great because I was learning alongside my students at the same time using the tutorials. All right, so always make sure you're kind of checking back on the homepage to see, well, what's new. All right, so we're going to do a walkthrough of Chase the Pizza. I think it's the best one to kind of get started with because they create a game with very few lines of code or blocks of code. So if you would like to follow along, you can, or you can just sit back, relax, and watch. Hopefully, I am entertaining enough. All right, so here we go. The tutorial starts off with kind of this introduction. This is where the students kind of see what their goal is for this tutorial. And it will give them an image or a GIF of kind of what the end product is going to look like. And hopefully they can work their way kind of as they're working towards this, they can kind of see where it's going. So this game is just, we're going to try to eat as many pizzas as possible before the time runs out. One thing I do want to point out is another great accessibility feature is the immersive reader that Microsoft has built into this. So anytime that you see this icon, students can click on it. It's going to open up the immersive reader. If you haven't used this before, it's a fantastic tool where you can adjust the size of the font, increase the spacing, different kind of color schemes. It can even, I believe, translate to different languages. So the instructions, this is kind of really adaptable. It could read the words out loud, as well as kind of provide a picture for the words. So this is great for students that, again, maybe are English as a second language, or they're learning English, or again, speaking a different language than what the instructions are written in. All right, so that comes with all of the steps. All the steps have that immersive reader. You can see it right here. All right, so here we have our first step. We're going to set the background color. And just like Kiki said, the words are color-coded. The instructions are color-coded. So it kind of helps guide the students to where they should be looking at with the toolbox. And if you click, it will open that up for the students. And another thing you'll notice is the toolbox doesn't have all the blocks available. If you were to open up the editor, you'll see kind of the very wide selection of all the different blocks available. This is nice because it limits actually what the blocks are going to be using in this tutorial. So again, it kind of narrows in the focus for the students and they don't become distracted with everything else. Because I could tell you, with my classroom experience, they love to kind of go and explore, and it can kind of be a little bit distracting, and they get off track easily, especially once they discover the extension category. That's always fun. All right, so we have our instructions, and again, we have these drop downs, which are great because it adds a little bit more information without cluttering kind of like the main instructions. So again, when given instructions, we have the highlighted text. So this is a great tutorial that will introduce the tutorial itself. So let's go in here. We can set the background. Hopefully I zoom in a bit. And this is where you're kind of encouraging students to kind of make it their own, to remix it a bit so they can choose the background color to what they like. All right, so now we're going to go on to the next step. All right, so now we're going to add a player sprite, open the sprites drawer, and then we're going to set it into the on start. And this is great because we have right here a definition for a key word, a key concept when creating games is the sprite, right? So a character or image that's called a sprite. Again, that's why I love these drop-down boxes, because they provide key information without cluttering it up. And then you can even see that we have a GIF of what the steps should be. All right. So again, this is for like beginners, right? So they're getting used to the layout and kind of getting their feet wet with game development and coding. If you kind of have more advanced learners, you kind of want to open up what they can be able to do. So let's click on to the image. And with tutorials, which is great, is that they'll come with custom images. I don't know if you notice when Kiki was presenting, when she went to the gallery, we didn't have these smiley faces. So these tutorials will have custom assets that are made just for the tutorial. So if your students maybe aren't artistically inclined, they can easily just kind of pick from here. So with a smiley face, they can edit it if they want. They can create their own. So we want to encourage that creativity. All right, so let's move on. And again, we can see what's happening in our game simulator. We can go full screen, back to minimum. All right, next step, draw your sprite by clicking. So again, we kind of skip that step, but I believe you get the idea where maybe an angry, evil. For some reason, my students always like to make the sprites evil. So now we got an evil smiley face. Click done. Again, we still have the show me of a GIF kind of showing you the steps of what you can do. All right, so now we're going to enter in our controls for our character. So go into the controller, dropping it in. And even though this is not in the tutorial, but again, encouraging kind of exploration, you'll notice that some of the blocks has this plus icon. If you open it up, it gives you a little bit more parameters. So you could change arguments you can put in to kind of adjust how the sprite is moving. So right now they're kind of moving 100 on the VX. Kids can increase that and encourage that exploration, and then we can test it out in the game window. So let's see how this affects it. So now the character is moving a lot faster. So again, as you're going with these tutorials, yeah, you're kind of still building the same thing, but you're making these minor adjustments to kind of personalize it for the students. And again, I think speed's number one. And that might come back with a mod. Maybe the more food that they eat, you can have the player kind of slow down as they get more full. Again, just some ideas. All right, and again, here we go. You can test your game in the window, make sure it's kind of working as it should before you move on to the next step. All right, so now we're going to add some pizza, make sure we're good on time. So again, let's just say this is a lot of text for me, a little confusing. You can always click on this hint button. This is going to kind of show you what block you need to add for this step. Again, another good visual. Ooh, I like the inverted controllers. Maybe you have like a sour pizza, one that's kind of went bad. You eat one of those, then your controls are reversed. It's a good idea. Yeah, so now we can see more of a visual of what we need to do. So sprites, set pizza. You'll notice how it's already kind of properly named, so your students don't have to worry about kind of renaming or creating variable names. We'll go into sprites, click on the gallery. Again, you can choose from anything, maybe a little science. You can incorporate a little science into here. Maybe you pick like an animal and then have the students design kind of what that animal would eat. That would be the food instead of the pizza. All right, so we have the pizza, and we got to make sure it says in bold, making sure students focus on that. It should be a food kind of Sprite. All right, so now we have pizza in the middle, player in the middle, got a pizza face. All right. Got that. Making sure we have everything. All right. So I'm going to kind of try to speed run a little bit because I'm looking at the time. We're going to add a overlap block. So something happens when the player kind, which is our smiley face, overlaps or touch the food kind. Make sure I got everything right. We're going to change the score by 1 when this happens. I want to make sure this is working, but this is why you kind of want to encourage students to always test after each step to make sure everything's working properly. But we're noticing that our score is going up and not stopping. And this is actually kind of entertaining. I know my students just love this and kind of sit back and watch the score go up. I guess it's a kind of an idle game. All right, so let's move on and let's see how we can fix this. Good, a nice built-in question. Notice that you'll get way too many points when the pizza Sprite overlaps the pizza. All right, so we'll fix this. So we're going to make the position random. And again, you'll notice the block is already set up. Usually the position block doesn't have this pick random with the screen width and screen height. So again, it's kind of already nicely laid out for students just to drag and drop. This is a beginner skill map or tutorial. All right, so now when we test it out, our evil pizza, there we go, got it working. And last but not least, we kind of need like a game over state. There's got to be some kind of challenge with a game. So we're going to now start the countdown at 3 seconds every time we eat the pizza. So when the player overlaps the food, eats the pizza, we change the score, give it a new random position for the pizza, and then the countdown starts over again. I only got 1 that time, so now every time we eat the pizza, we get 1 point, and the countdown starts over. Now we kind of have like an endless, now we have a game loop. All right, so there's our turtle chasing, oh, Brittany, that's such a good idea. Turtle, that makes sense. But it has to be a ninja turtle, not just any regular old turtle. All right, so that's just kind of a walkthrough. And again, once you are done, click on this. You can share the project via the link. And then this is kind of the great part is where you can now open up and have complete access to the rest of the code blocks. So now you can have students all kind of on the same page, the same foundation. And then if you now want to kind of challenge them to add more to it, this is your opportunity to do that. Yeah, that's someone said similar code in Scratch and the code was much longer. Yes, a lot of these tutorials, they kind of built in blocks that do the heavy lifting. So kind of for beginners again, right? They can kind of create some cool things within their game, but the blocks are simplified and kind of do a lot of the behind the scenes stuff they don't see, but just makes it a little bit more accessible. All right, Kiki kind of already talked about this again. We have our skill maps. Again, this could be for more advanced learners or kind of ones where you are, instead of just having our standalone tutorials, they're now kind of even chunked a little bit more, and they're kind of made into little mini units. So you can kind of use these to focus on certain concepts and kind of build out a more well-polished game. And again, you can save your progress as long as you kind of sign in using your Google Microsoft account. I believe there's others as well. But every time you see these little puzzle pieces, that's its own individual standalone tutorial. Yeah, I do that as well. The creative mode, like when they're done, now they need to make at least 2 changes, which I think is great. Yeah, of course they go with the graphics. But then you can encourage them to put some sound effects in there as well, maybe some animation. Yeah, so I see that. What are some strategies you've used so the kids understand the coding versus copying the code? Yeah, that is a certain struggle, and that's why what I use in my classroom is I kind of use this as, here's all the collection. Let me kind of go forward to this. Is I use these tutorials kind of as my whole class instruction. It could be used for warm up if you're doing a flip class. You kind of flip classroom. You kind of or homework. The students complete that tutorial on their own, and then when they come to class or as you're doing it together, right, that's where your instruction takes over. So they kind of have all the fundamentals of this project complete. And then from there, you can kind of dive a little bit deeper into those blocks and kind of explain what's going on. And then once you get to your creative mode at the end of that, then you can kind of challenge them to then add a different feature or behavior with those blocks that you used in the tutorial. So that was a great question. But yeah, these are really, tutorials can be used through every stage of the lesson, whole class, independent practice. I use it for students that miss class. It was a great way for them to kind of catch up on what we've been doing in class on their own. Fast finishers. So we always have those students that finish sometimes too fast, where you're just like, really? You did everything? And you check it and yeah. They just pick it up like that. And also subplans as well. I think with the skill maps, Kiki pointed out, they have learning outcomes, kind of breaks everything down, gives you kind of a rough estimate of which each stage of the skill map, how many minutes is going to take and what concepts are being covered. Or just making sure code tracing. Yeah, I also, another strategy is you can right click and add comments on certain blocks. I always like to have my students kind of explain what the code is doing as well, kind of explain to me what's going on here. So that's another way to kind of check for understanding. All right, so my time is kind of wrapping up here, but what are some resources and kind of what's next? I encourage you to visit the educators page. Again, it has kind of all these resources. Let me just kind of show that to you. If you scroll down, you'll notice here's all these standalone tutorials and kind of how they're mapped out. You can kind of see that here are some junior ones. These are the ones that are more kind of with our early readers, and then it progresses. And the skill maps, they're kind of all on the same level. MakeCode forum, please check that out. I think everyone here today that's presenting is very active. The MakeCode team's very active on there. They'll help you out if you let them know. I'm on there at Rymick88. And then the one last thing I want to point out is you can make your own tutorials and skill maps. Now, it's a little bit more not too much in depth, but I don't have enough time to go over it. But you can create your own, which I did for my classes, right? So for warm-ups, I created my own kind of tutorial. So I can customize kind of what I want the students to do and kind of present that scaffolding. So just kind of give you a little brief look. Again, this is for all the MakeCode platforms, but you can choose which platform you're using. MakeCode Arcade. Here we go. Perfect time for my computer run there. All right, you can click run, and here's the markdown of kind of what's going on. Here's what the students are going to see. Here are the steps. And if you need documentation, right in the right-hand corner, you can see your tutorial docs. So definitely check that out. If you need help, I'll be in the educator forum helping you out with that if you want to learn more about that.